When we last met, we had just cut down the top of our table runner. So I will now show you the steps as to how you will quilt it. To quilt it, you will need a piece of backing that is slightly wider and longer than the actual quilt top, and you will also need a piece of batting. Now, the batting, there's all different types of battings. There are some that are cotton, there are some are cotton polyester, there are some that are just polyester. That's up to you. So now, what we would do is we would place the quilt top on. So what we have, as opposed to when we sewed, we have the right side facing down. And now the next part is we have to attach these 3 layers together before we quilt. Now, there are actually, I'm sure there are more than the ways that I'm going to show you. Some people at this point would take long pieces of thread and they would just put big basting strips up and down to hold it all in place. I've never been a fan of that. What you could also do at this point, let me backtrack a minute. Say you didn't want to really quilt it the way I'm going to show you. What you could do is that you could take this, turn it like this, so batting down, and the fabric like this. You could put this right sides together, and you could sew a 1/4 inch all the way around, leaving maybe this much open. You could then turn it inside out and just put a couple stitches to tack it down, and then you would be done. But the method I'm showing you would be the same as if you were to quilt, to bind a quilt. So we're going to go back here. Now, I'm not doing it with the long basting threads. And with anything, you want to have a little on the edges just in case in quilting something were to shift. So I do it with a variety, and I would say do what you have, because as you get further into quilting, you can find that things become much more expensive. I would say it's nice to shop at your nearest quilt shop, but you will pay a premium price and so it's always going to be cheaper if you can pick up some of these supplies at Walmart or Amazon, or just a non-quilt shop, or Joann's with a coupon. Okay, so you can use these pins, which are incredibly long and have these flat heads, and they are called flower pins. And if I were to do that, I would just pin like this, and I would just go in opposite directions, okay? Now, if you don't have flower pins and you just have straight pins around the house, you can do the same thing. It's just that you might have to use a few more, but vary the direction that you are pinning so that we have it nice and firm. Hold on one second. Let's make that like that. Okay. Now, you could also use, these are safety pins that are for quilting because they are curved. And the thought being that as you go like this, well, I'm not proving my point right now, it's easier to get them to come through. If you're going to use them, something like this will really save your fingers, because then you just clip them up like that. And then if you really want to spend some money, you can buy these with these handles, which do make it a lot easier to maneuver them because you're holding on to this big piece of plastic. And again, we're just trying to put them in different directions so that what we want to do is we want to hold this tight and taut, okay? So let's, for the ease of getting something done right away. Okay. So what we're going to do is we are going to pretend that I have pinned the rest of this. And I'm just going to pin this down here in place so that I can show you how we would do what I call quilting in the ditch. Now, you may decide that you want to do some kind of pattern. You may want to do flowers or a design, and that's totally up to you. I generally don't do a lot of my own quilting. On a project like this, I would, but any of my quilts, I have to admit, I do what's called quilting by check, and I send them out to someone else to quilt them. So let's go over to the sewing machine and I will demonstrate how to quilt this in a ditch. So it isn't necessary, but if you are going to try to quilt something on your domestic machine, it would be helpful to have this device. And this device is what's called a walking foot. And this machine was made in the 70s, and I was able to purchase one of these. They're pretty generic. You can, again, get them from a quilt shop, or you can get them from a lot of online stores, sewing vacuum machine part stores. And what this foot does is that it allows, it helps the feed dogs in the sewing machine to move all 3 layers of these materials at the same rate, so that on the back side you don't have any bumps or lumps because things are moving at different rates. They're fairly inexpensive. They're about $25. And like I said, I have 2 for each of my machines. And like I said, this is a machine from the 70s. So they're fairly affordable. And it does make life a lot easier. For this quilting, I've changed my thread to purple to match this. In a perfect world, I could have found something that would go from purple to brown to green to brown, but we're just going to use the purple. And what we're going to try to do is we are going to try to sew right in that seam line. Okay? So let's begin. So what we're going to do is we are going to just put them down. Again, we are going to hold the tails of the thread. We are going to make our stitch a little longer so that it's not as tight, and that will help things. And let me set this correctly, and let's put on these glasses to make sure I can see what I'm doing. And cross our fingers. Okay, so what I'm trying to do is there's this little part, and I find that if I put it up against this seam, I have the best results. But let me just mention that once you wash even if I were to come off, once you wash this, it's going to be nice and it'll crumple up and you'll never see any of these stitches. So don't be better than me and don't stress about this. So what we're just doing is we are just trying to sew as close as we can to the middle. And this is one that you would want to take your time sewing, because every time I feel cocky that I'm doing well, that's when I'm not happy with how it looks. So just take your time. Now, you don't have to do every row. You could do every other row. It's up to you. You could also take a chalk pencil and draw some sort of design and do that as well. I'm surprised that I did a nice enough job where I'm not having to move a lot of pins, which is... So we're just going, and you can see that it looks at times like it's going to get all puffy, but then the feed dogs move it back and it flattens it out. Okay. Okay, so we have now finished one row, and let's see how I did. So there you go. If you look, at times, it's not too bad. I mean, I can live with that. So what you've done is you've just stitched in the ditch all the way down. Okay, and this is what it looks like on the other side. Okay, so let me show you, because you don't need to watch me do that 7 more times. Let me show you one that has already been completed. So I have completed this one, and as you can see, what I did so that you could see better, I used an off-white. So you can see, like here, you can see it a little more. Believe me, once this is finished and washed, and as a table runner, it will be washed, you'll never see that. So now what we need to do is we need to quickly square this up. We are just going to place a straight edge along this way and here. And again, we want our 4 fingers here and a pinky there. And we want to just, there we go. And then on this, what I would suggest is we're going to put it the straight edge, and you may find that because of the quilting, things may have gotten a little cattywampus, but I will show you. So when you cut here, what I would suggest is to cut in a series. Don't try to go all the way up, because as you get here, you won't be able to hold, and I've had it where it's shifted. So we'll just move this and we'll just line it back up, and we'll just keep cutting, and then so now you can see that here we're a little off, but not a problem. It's going to be caught in. And then what we would do, well, let's just finish this up. Some people also take a small weight and put a small weight here, and that can also help. So now we are ready for the binding. To make this binding, we need 3 strips that are 2.5 inches wide and roughly 40 to 44 inches long. Should you have smaller portions of strips, you would just need more strips. And what you do is you will take the first strip and you will open it up like this. And then you will take this second strip and you will put it across like this. And what we're going to do is we are going to, I believe, sew a 45-degree angle from here to here so that when we do, we'll open it up like this. And that's how we sew the strips together. For this, you can just use a little ruler and depending on the color, for this I can use a pencil, I could use a pen, I could use a silver pencil. For darker fabric, you might have to use a chalk pen or a white pen. But in our case, a pencil should do it. And what you want to do is you want to get the corner here and the corner here, and you want to press down nice and hard and just draw a line. And it doesn't matter how dark it is because we are going to sew on that. And so then we're going to put in a pin like that and a pin like that. Now we need a third strip, so be very careful. So what we want to do is we want to find the right side of this, because I have been known to flip them or twist them, and that did not make me happy. And then we're going to open up this other one. And we are going to do the same thing. We're just going to put this from corner to corner, and you want to get right up in there. And you want to be able, as light or as dark as you need to see it when you go over to the sewing machine. Okay. Okay, so let's go over to the sewing machine and we can sew these together. We are back at the sewing machine, and yes, I am going to sew this with purple thread just to show you it really doesn't matter. And so we're going to still, there's nothing wrong keeping the walking foot in here. And I'm going to hold onto the tails. If you learn nothing else from me, it's to hold on to the tails, a 1/4 inch seam, and not to sew over your pins like I do. And we're just going to carefully just sew right on that penciled line. Okay? If you're off a smidge, life will go on. But there we go. And then we'll just kind of chain piece this one just on. We'll just move this a little bit out of our way. There we go. And let's just right on the line. Okay, so now if this was a larger project, of course you would have more binding strips. At this point, we need to get rid of this excess fabric. Now, you could go over to the cutting table and you could put the ruler on it and you could cut a 1/4 inch, but it's just as easy to just take your scissors and cut that off. And let me find the other one. And then we're just gonna cut this off as well. And next, we're going to go over to the ironing board. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take care of these two seams. And what we'll do is, as before, we will set it, and then we will just kind of finger press this and then iron it flat. And then, oh, there we are. Here's the other one hiding. We will just do this. Let me get this way. Be easier. And then we will just go like this. And you can see it matters not that we used purple thread. Now, what we need to do is we need to take the strip and we need to iron it in half. So what we're going to do is we're going to match up the edges, and then we're just going to very carefully go like this. And we're just going to keep pressing and moving and pressing and moving. This is kind of nice because you don't really have to think. But we're going to do this until we have taken this whole strip and ironed it in half all the way down. So now we have our quilted table runner and our binding that's all been sewn, has been sewn, the strips are sewn together, and then we have taken them and ironed them in half. And what we're going to do now is we are going to attach this binding strip to this table runner. The procedure that we're going to use is the same as if this were a quilt for a lap quilt or a baby quilt or a king or queen size quilt. So what we do is I usually leave a good 6 inches, and I usually start on one of the longer edges. And we are going to take this up to the edge, and we are going to, I'm just going to move this a little like this, and we are going to pin it in place. Okay? And we will, again, this is another instance where a walking foot really, really is very advantageous. So as we get close to the edge, I'm going to take this ruler and I'm going to put a pin at the 1/4 inch mark. We want to sew up to a 1/4 inch. Okay. And we're going to pin that in place. Okay. And now we will take this to the sewing machine. So we have started our binding by pinning it up until a 1/4 inch from the edge. And you can see I have a little batting peeking out. All will be well. And what we're going to do is we are going to start a little bit before the spot where the pin is, and we're going to sew a 1/4 inch seam. Okay, we're going to hold on to those tails, and we are going to just sew a 1/4 inch all the way until we get to the pin that signifies that we are a 1/4 inch from the edge. And then I'm going to show you something that took me a while to figure out, because in the early days I was more self-taught until we had a local quilt shop open. Okay, so I was turning the wheel of the sewing machine to make sure that I got right up to where the pin is, and then I'm going to just take a couple stitches backwards. Okay, I'm going to take this off and cut it. And then, of course, the rest of the binding fell on the floor. But let me show you what we're going to do next. At this point, you can buy a special, let me get these threads out of here. You can buy a special ruler that says it's a binding tool, or any ruler that has a 45-degree line will work. And what we're going to do, we're going to remove this pin. We're going to put the edges equal here and here, and I'll show you just with the regular generic ruler. And we are going to get it to where, do you see how the binding, one second, that's a little bit more. See how the binding is now forming a 45-degree angle? You're going to hold that in place. We're going to put a pin here, okay? And what we want to do is we want to be careful because we need that pin to stay in place. Now, we are going to fold this over, and let me find some pins, and we are going to start pinning in place again. Okay, let me turn this, maybe a better angle. So we have folded it over, and we are going to once again start to pin, and we are going to pin again until we get down here. We're going to put a pin again where that 1/4 inch mark was. See, 1/4 inch right there. And I will pin this in place. And then I'm going to show you again how to do those corners, because those corners, I found it very counterintuitive when I first learned how to do this. But it does make a very nice mitered look when it's done. So we're just going to take some more pins. We're going to just pin, pin, pin. And we're going to sew right up to where we get there. So let's just get that. And let's move those. And let's sew this again. So now I'm going to put the binding in my lap so it can fall on the ground again. Some people do something where they put it in a tube of toilet paper, or an empty tube of toilet paper, and they wear it on their neck. I don't know. I'd probably strangle myself. So we're just going to go in. And again, this is another reason to have this walking foot, because now we have multiple layers, and we're going to hold this, and we're just going to continue to sew our 1/4 inch all the way down. And then we'll do another corner. Just take your time. Okay, and then when I get close, I sometimes like to just do it with the wheel so that I know I get right up to that pin, and just, if you can, a couple spots, stitches in reverse. Okay, so let's take this off and let's do that corner procedure again. Let's move this out of the way so we have plenty of room. Take this pin out. We are going to use this 45-degree angle. I hope it's 45 degrees. Geometry was not my strong suit. And then we're going to place it here so that this is flush with this and this edge is flush with here. And we're just going to ever so gently pull it until we get it just so. A little more there, a little more there. Put your big finger down and just enough to keep it in place. And then once again, we are going to take this and we are going to push it back onto ourselves. Okay? And then we will, again, just sew this edge all the way down to the next corner. Okay? Now, I have one that all the corners have been sewn, and let me show you how we finish up at the end. Okay, so now we have gone around and I have sewn all 4 corners down, and it's at this point that we have to have these 2 pieces meet. Now, I will tell you, I have routinely made a mistake doing this. So if I do so today, we will leave that in. I'm going to just take a little piece off. So what we want to do is we want to put a pin. Okay, we're having this one come this way, the left side here, and then we want to bring the right side over, and where they overlap, and it would be nice if I had cut it more straight, and where they overlap, this one point, I am going to put a pin in place. Okay? So now I need to open this up without losing my spot. And we are going to attempt to have this, and we're going to do the same procedure we did when we were making the binding strips. And if you take the width of the binding strip, and sometimes I do this on the ironing board because I can stick pins in to hold it straight. But we're gonna hope that since I'm filming this, I'm gonna do this correctly. We're gonna go from edge to edge. Oh, I'm sorry. This might not be easy for you to see, but it is kind of a contortionist act. So what I've done is we're going from edge to edge, and because I didn't, it would have been better if I had cut the edge with a ruler. I'm going to take this pen and make my line. Now, normally you've seen me take it and put the pins this way, but I want to make sure this is going to work. So I'm actually putting the pins on the stitching line. And I will tell you, because of all the times I've messed this up. I've made over 120 quilts, and invariably I can get this part wrong. So, see? So I didn't get it wrong. Okay, so maybe we should film me every time I have to do one of these. So now what we're going to do is we are going to take this and we're going to switch the pins to as if we're just regular sewing, and I'm going to just quickly sew this seam on the sewing machine. So we've got this pinned in place, and again, just to prove the point, it really doesn't matter. We are going to sew this down now with the orange thread that I used for the other binding. And so again, like when we made our binding, we are just going to sew directly on that line. Hold on. Let me see. Get this just, it is important to try to get it just so. And we are going to just sew right on that line. And this can be a little cumbersome when you have a bigger project, and but you want to just Okay, then we're going to take this out, and in a minute we will go over after we trim this. 1 second. We are going to trim this off as we did with the bindings. And we're going to just take it over and give it a quick press on the iron. Okay, so just as we did with the binding, we're just going to set our seam. We're just going to finger press that down. And then what we want to do is we want to fold it in half. And we can just press it like this. And then we will go over, we will pin it, and then we will continue sewing this flat. And then I'll show you how we will turn this out to then sew it in place. We're going to hold on to the tails. Sew it. 1/4 inch seam again. Pretty much, we use the 1/4 inch seam 99.9% of the time. Okay. Now, what we will do is I will show you how we turn this so that we have a nice finished edge to our table runner. So now what we need to do is we need to turn the binding over, and what we'll do is we'll pin this in place so that we can then come along and hand sew it down. Some people like to turn it, let me show you. Some people would pin it in place, and then they would like to sew in this ditch to anchor it down. I'm not a big proponent of that, but feel free to do it. So you would turn it like this, and you can either use your handy dandy all-purpose pins, or, let me show you. They do sell these little clips, and they're called Wonder Clips. Wonder Clips are the trademark clips that, again, I would not buy them without a coupon, and they can be quite pricey. Sometimes if you put them in a cart, say on a big box store, or they will eventually go on sale, or if you have a coupon. And what you do is you just, let's see, let me do this so that maybe you can see it better. You turn it, and then you use them to clip. Now the advantage is that you're not sticking yourself with these pins, but there's many different ways to do things, and what you'll all need to do is figure out the way that is best for you. I have been known to use the pins. I have been known to use the clips. I have a sample to show you where I have both pins and clips. But the important part to show is what we do when we get to the corner. Okay, so we're going to keep coming until we get to the corner. And I really hope this looks nice, because sometimes they don't. And I guess that would be real life. So we've now got it like this. We want to take a little space over here, and we just want to turn it over without pulling. We don't want to distort anything. and we want to put maybe 2 in place here. Okay, so here what we want to do is we want to have it mitered so that it comes in at a 45-degree angle. Can you see that? Okay, so we will do that all the way around, and I have one here. You might notice that this was the one that the directions have, and I'll show you where I've done it with pins, and here's the 45-degree angle. And at this point, you would just take a needle and a thread, and you would just sew it down with a little slip stitch all the way around. I did want to show you that on the back of this table runner, I had made another one for a sample that wasn't used, and I had run out of this material. And so I just want to show you that you can, if you don't have enough material, put a different piece. You could use up extra strips. Some people use the back of their quilts or the back of their table runners to put a little design element of a different, but it does not have to match. This purple kind of matches. On the one that I was working on, we had an orange one, and then the other one I was sampling, that one will have a purple backing and it will have this green border. So there is no rule as to what you have on your back. You may want to back it with a material that is totally different from the front. Maybe it's not a solid. Maybe it's a very pretty print so that it could be two-sided. That is all up to you, and this is your table runner, and you make it what you want it. But once you, once you sew this all the way down, you have a complete table runner that can be used immediately. Okay? I've hoped you've enjoyed these videos, and maybe you can join us for when we do the trivet. The trivet will be similar to this. It will be a smaller version. So if maybe a project like this seems a little daunting, you could start out with the smaller version, and then I will be giving some information on a different batting you might use for the trivet. Thanks so much for watching, and if you have any questions on this film and on the tutorial that comes with the kits, there is my contact information, and please reach out to me if you have any questions or concerns that I can help you with. Thanks.